Friendship has been on my mind a lot lately. What kinds of friendships fulfill me? What kinds of friendships I'm invested in? What kind of connections feel important to me that I want to be cultivating or that I want to be nourishing? And I figured I'm not alone in that. So we're going to do a little bit of a kind of an us and them reading, more of like what we're coming forward with towards friendship and what we're wanting in response or to receive, or what we're attracted to in friendship. So it's going to be a little bit of a broader scope. It might be for you that you see yourself or others in your life in these cards, and I completely trust that. It's up to you to decipher what the message is here for you in some ways. I'm here to help, but take it as it resonates and leave the rest. Okay. I'm going to start with the archetype deck, and we're just going to have a card for us and a card for us of what we're bringing to the table and a card for what we're wanting to meet at the table. What we are bringing to the table. Ooh. What we're wanting to meet at this table. Okay. Let's see what we got. Oh, wow. What's that? That's not the energy I was thinking we might receive, so interesting. We're bringing the Judge, and we are hoping to receive or to meet the Maiden. Ooh. This is very interesting. I think we're being called out a little bit. Okay. So the Judge has an energy of authority, has an energy of discernment, is a very, in the depiction of this card, is a very literal black and white card. There's only a tiny bit of color here. And that color, I think, is representing like the truth that the Judge moves from. So there is something solid that the Judge is moving with, right? There is a truth that grounds them. And at the same time, sometimes the Judge can be judgmental, can be forceful, arrogant. Is not always coming from a place of connected understanding, and it's sometimes coming from a place of self-centered understanding. So not connecting to the empathy of what the other person might be going through, but instead coming from a place of, I know what's best for everyone, not just myself. The Judge doesn't have to be that way, but like the word judge to me has this very like incarceration connected vibe. Like it comes through with that word as something a bit harsh, a bit authoritarian, a bit ruling over, right? So interesting that that's how we are showing up into into friendship. Gonna have to look at that. And what we're wanting to meet when we come forward with this energy is the maiden, which is a very like soft and sensual energy. The maiden doesn't have to be like feminine or female, right? I mean, there can be a femness to the maiden, and I think that all genders can have this experience. The maiden is about being like innocent and excited about the world, and like sometimes so excited about the world that we get lost in the possible threat of danger. We don't necessarily see what could be coming our way that we would not enjoy. There's a very like tender part of the maiden. And the reason why I think femness, not necessarily like gendered female, woman, child, like girl experience, is part of it, is because to me, the maiden has this like femme experience of being sensually alive in their body. And the reason why I connect that to femness is because there is a like vulnerability in that. Whereas I think maskness, and like just to be clear, what I mean by femness and maskness is like the expression of femininity or masculinity that is taken out of the context of traditional gender norms. So someone of any gender could express femness, and someone of any gender could express maskness. These terms are funny. And in doing so, it's outside of the realm of like, this is what it means to be femme, or this is what it means to be mask, but it's more about the internal experience of those energies and what comes forward when you're in those energies. And for me, femness has a kind of soft power, a kind of like curiosity, excitement, enthusiasm about it. And not to say that other experiences can't be that, but just that femness for me has that. And sometimes femness can come in really hard, can be really tough, but the maiden's version is like full of wonder and excitement about the possibility of being more alive. So it's that kind of pleasure-centered delight that doesn't necessarily know the dangers that can come from overindulgence or from engaging with people that we don't know that we can trust yet, or allowing others to be present with our most vulnerable, innocent parts without a way to protect them first, protect ourselves first, right? So there's like a naivete here. There's also like, it's not that the maiden is like not smart. I think the maiden is kind of complex for me, so that's why I feel like I really want to like go into this. It's not that the maiden is not smart or intelligent. It's that they are so in wonder, in awe of what is happening with life, like with the life around them, with their own life force within their body, that they don't always pay attention. They don't have the same guard or the same defensiveness that other archetypes do, right? Because the maiden also, one of the kind of, the maiden doesn't move from a place of having been harmed. The maiden moves from a place of openness to possibility. And it's not to say that the maiden has never been harmed. There's many stories about the maiden being harmed. And that energy is able to like release those things, to not be centered on the need to protect, but is more centered on the willingness to be open. And so this interaction between the two is very complex. Because I also want to name that it's not that the maiden cannot protect themselves, right? The maiden can. And also the maiden doesn't move from that place. The maiden moves from a place of willing delight, willing enjoyment, willing pleasure, accepting the possibility of that. And wanting it. I mean, there's a lot of desire in the maiden. The maiden also feels very romantic to me, like a very just romantic energy. And that, again, can be like within any gender, can be with any sexual or relationship orientation. It is just an energy that feels very alive and eager to be alive. And not ashamed or embarrassed or scared about how that makes them vulnerable. Okay. So let's get some more cards out just to see what else is going on in this dynamic. We're going to use Fifth Spirit for this. And let's just see, what is the judge wanting with the maiden? Oh. Huh. Okay, we've got the sun. Speaking of friends, that's my friend Charlie and Aaron. Okay. And then let's say, whoa, okay. Well, apparently we're just going to do more of what we just did. So this is what the judge is wanting. And let's see what the maiden is wanting. Oh, okay. Those are all flipped. That's great. We'll take those. Okay. So we have the sun first as what the judge is wanting, which makes some sense. We're going to say this is right side up. The King of Wands and the Ten of Wands. I think we got those last time too. Okay, so interesting. Okay. So the kind of deepest desire or most direct desire that the judge is wanting is the sun, right? This bigger energy, this energy of being authentic, being in full force, being fully shown to the world. I would also say with the judge's energy being here, being respected, being seen as what helps people grow, or like what the light that shines on people's full experience, right? So that's kind of like how this part of us, this judge part that's coming forward and wanting friendship, is coming from a place of like wanting our authority to be known and to be shown. This is also present with the King of Wands, right? The King of Wands is very much a passion-centered way of existing in the world. It's interesting that it came out initially as reversed, and I kind of chose not to take that. I think both can be true, so I'm going to read it both ways, which is like, I think the judge is kind of balancing between this expression of the King of Wands being a mature expression of our passion and desire in the world, and an immature expression of our passion and desire in the world. Because I think the judge does kind of stand on this very thin line between supportive and connective discernment that helps people understand themselves and others better, and a place of judging authority that tells others that they don't know the truth, right? So obviously the mature expression of that passion and desire is around like helping people to understand and to feel connected in their own passions and their own like life force energy, which makes sense why the judge is then desiring or like wanting to connect with the maiden, right? There's also a kind of power dynamic happening between the judge and maiden, in that the judge comes from a place of like solid knowing in themselves, in what they know is true, what they believe is right. And the maiden comes from a place of more opening to what could be true, right? There's maybe less of a grounded knowing in the maiden and more of a kinetic energy of knowing. So like, I'm going to know more once I experience it. I'm going to know more once I'm in the situation. It's more of an intuitive knowing, right? The judge is like in a solid place of, I believe and know this. The maiden is in a place of, I believe and open to what could be, and my intuition can guide me there. So the King of Wands has this like maturity, immaturity kind of thing happening. Again, with the judge being kind of black and white in the way it's drawn, and also just like the energy of it, it feels very fitting that the King of Wands is kind of flip-floppy. Goes back and forth between reverse and not reverse. So, or upright. So the King of Wands is like, I am this mature life force that is moving forward and helping guide other people on the path or on my path. And reversed, I am all-knowing and I tell people what they should be doing, and I am righteous in my life force in that way, right? So it's like taking on too much responsibility or taking over someone else's power to decide and choose where their life force goes, because the King of Wands decides this is what's going to be true. And lastly, here is the 10 of Wands, which is about creative release I see it as creative release and expression. So once we've gotten to the point of fully creating something, the wands for me are like the creativity or creation cards that suit. And so the 10 of Wands is like this creative, you've done all of the work. You've gone through the peaks and the valleys and the whole creative process, and you've made the thing. And the 10 of Wands is the release of it out into the world, where it's no longer under your control, or it's no longer still being molded by you, and it instead is out there in expression. And the 10 of Wands being here, I think, is really interesting, because the like more traditional reading of the 10 of Wands is about the releasing of a burden, a responsibility that you have held too long, right? That there's something weighing you down and you have to let it go. And I think that both can be true here, right? We're talking kind of, again, in that black and white space. So if the judge is coming from a place of like mature King of Wands energy, then part of what that energy does is creates conversations, creates new ways of looking at the world, creates engagement with the other that allows them, the other person, to create something with the King of Wands. And then the 10 of Wands is the release of that to the other person, to be the expression of it, to do something with it. It was an engagement, a connection that we had. It was a building of a relationship, and we're here with it. And there's also the release of power, right? Of, you have your life force, I have mine. You will do what you want with what we have created, and I will do what I want. So the responsibility there is mature. The 10 of Wands was also reversed when it came out. And so I'm going to read it both ways again, right? Just like the King of Wands. So instead of releasing here, the 10 of Wands is then held, is kept. And to me, that speaks to the kind of authoritarian or like kind of parental almost energy that the judge can have around knowing what's right or being responsible. And so not really releasing that whatever is created with this maiden energy, not really releasing it for them to both do what they want to with it, but instead kind of holding on, maybe sometimes controlling or coming from a place of control around what the maiden is going to do. Not the best place to be in, not the best energy. Very problematic in some ways, right? But both are possible. And I think that that's actually like kind of the point of the sun. The sun is a card that is about like our authentic selves coming through, of being brave and showing our truths, of being honest and open, being free in a lot of ways from like the judgments that we put on ourselves. And at the same time, the sun can also be exposing. It can burn. It can be a painful place to be. And if we're not aware of how our fire, all of these are fire, right? If we're not aware of how our fire is coming through, how it is actually connecting to the people that we're connected to, then it's not going to be as nurturing. It's not going to be as supportive. It's not going to be as enjoyable to be around, right? Because that fire can be really intense. We can come through real hot, you know? So part of this is like the judge, and it's interesting because the judge actually feels like a very cold archetype to me. But I do feel like, I mean, obviously there's like the one section of yellow in this card, and that feels very connected to like the fire of us. And so the judge, it feels like in some way the judge is kind of trying to temper, trying to like control their own fire, their own life force, their own passion. And in doing that and trying to negotiate that and keep themselves more contained, they actually can get lost in the boundaries between what they are containing and containing someone else, right? So they can move from controlling themselves to controlling others very easily, because of that kind of projection that happens with us when we're denying parts of ourselves. Okay. So let's look at the maiden. What is the maiden kind of bringing forward, and what do they want? I'm going to flip this around too. Queen of Cups. Okay. Three of Swords. Interesting. And Four of Pentacles. Oh, okay. I appreciate that, like, it kind of goes, like, deeper desire, and then how it's kind of showing up. I appreciate how these cards came out. So, okay. The Maiden's desire for the Queen of Cups feels like a deeper connection to their own intuitive understanding, their own impulsivity, and how they can connect and care for that, their own heart and how their heart is leading them. It does feel like the Maiden is very heart-centered, very like passion and love-centered, emotionally centered. And so this Queen of Cups feels very true of letting that intuitive wisdom come through, that they could be a vessel for that intuitive wisdom to flow through as like their deeper desire of coming into connection. Which is then interesting because of this Three of Swords, which is, I mean, I love Charlie's depiction in this card because the swords are the needles that are repairing the heart, right? So the Maiden, that's in some ways that feels like the buoyancy or the sweetness that this Maiden energy brings forward is a willingness for their heart to be broken, a willingness to engage with what pain could be, because they know that they can repair their own inner experience, that they are strong enough, that they are loving enough, that those wounds will be healed by their own hand. And I think that that's a very beautiful way for the Maiden to be showing up, Because there can be a naivete, like I mentioned, there can be a naivete to the maiden energy that is not aware that hurt could happen, or is not wanting to believe that hurt can happen. And what these cards are now kind of pointing out is this maiden energy that our judge is wanting to engage with knows that hurt can happen and does it anyway because they trust themselves. I think there's something about like trusting their emotional well-being, their emotional selves, their emotional care that they can give themselves. It's core to how they're relating in the world. And they can trust themselves in that. Also very interesting, sorry, I just realized, I think it's very interesting that the judge has pure kind of fire energy. I mean, the sun is obviously a major arcana, but there's all wand energy there. Like the sun is very much a fire card, obviously. And the maiden is coming with more of an eclectic blend, right? The maiden is coming from three different places. From cups, from water, from air, from swords, and from pentacles, from earth. And I think that the fact that like the maiden can bring so much, the judge is really banking on. The judge is really into that. I think that there's like a lack of fire, first of all. So the judge brings that. And there's other elements that help fuel that fire or help care for that fire in some way, right? So then this Four of Pentacles is, I mean, the Four of Pentacles to me, which is maybe not how other people read it, but I have a very specific relationship to this card, is a kind of masculine care. A kind of mask care, I guess I should say, because we're already talking about that, which is grounded, which is rooted in deep understanding of the other, of wanting to nurture and hold and support. Mask care specifically, I guess in some ways I want to distance mask care from like masculinity, because I think often in our cultures, masculinity becomes equated with like toxic masculinity, which then toxic masculinity says that care for another is about controlling them. And that's not what we're doing here, right? The maiden's desire is not to be controlled, but to be rooted, right? Look at the card, rooted and supported, to be held, to be tended to and fed, but to be free, right? The maiden wants freedom in that kind of care, wants support and love that is unconditional so that they can experience whatever they need to, whatever they desire to, whatever their intuition leads them to. And I think there's quite a deep wisdom here that the maiden is bringing forward, or that the judge is kind of yearning for the maiden to bring forward, right? That there's a deep knowing of themselves and how their intuition can guide them even when they don't know what's going to happen next. That they know that they can heal themselves, that they can come home to their own heart and care for it in ways that's needed no matter what happens. And that they're open to being held and cared for by another entity that can show up to match them, that can show up and do things that they don't necessarily want to have to do or enjoy doing or are able to offer themselves. Like there's something about, I mean, especially when we're talking about the kind of interplay or connections between our mask experience and our femme experience, those things fit together, not in like a biological way, but in a, that we all have those pieces, right? We all have those kind of energies in us and energies that don't identify anything close to that. And so there is an interconnection that creates a kind of structure in us when we are able to connect those differing parts, regardless of how they show up. And then the more of us can be filled, right, within that structure. And it really feels like the maiden is searching for that, knows themselves, knows how their feminist comes through, how their emotional self is, knows what it is that they're looking for in someone else, and wants that kind of held care. And the judge is desiring that because that life force, that power that they hold, that fire that they hold, knows it will be enriched by the experience of someone who comes in with these other elements. But there's still this kind of teetering for the judge, like that part of us that's coming forward and wanting this in friendship. There's kind of a teetering around, are we gonna fuck it up? I'm just gonna name that. That's what it feels like is coming through. Like, are we going to move towards being too controlling? Are we gonna burn them with our fire? Are we gonna force them to go places they don't want to go because we have the kind of fiery power that they're not bringing in the same way? I also feel like I really need to name that my Venus is in Aries in my birth chart, and that might be present here. You might be reading these cards or seeing these cards and thinking like, that's not how it feels for me. And that's okay. None of this has to be for everybody. But I do feel like there is like a possibility because of the kind of controlling energy that the judge can bring through. And then the fact that we're working with our passion, our fire. We know just in general in human experience that when we have a lot of passion or fire about something, we are walking on a tightrope. We are trying to figure out how to utilize that, how to be present with that, how to bring that forward without harming or hurting others, without trying to control things so we get what we want, without trying to make other people feel like they should want the same things we do, without trying to control situations so that it's the best outcome for us, right? Instead of seeing the whole of the situation. And so the judge, I think here we're being invited to both honor what it is that's being brought forward to us, what we're asking to be more in connection with, while also noticing and being responsible for ourselves and what we bring to the table. Because what we bring to the table is powerful. What we're bringing to the table is strong. And at the same time, it can be overpowering. It can cause harm. I think I want to do this. So I think we're going to pull another archetype card as kind of like a balance point. We're going to pull another archetype card for the balance point for our judge and the maiden energy we're calling in. So what is the balance point for the judge so that we don't fall into these possible controlling, difficult patterns, overpowering patterns? Yeah. Okay, let's look at the balance point for the maiden. Okay. So the maiden's balance point. Is the unseen. Okay. So it feels very much to me like our judge is being asked to bring forward what lights, but what does not light on fire, right? And the maiden that we're calling in or that we're wanting to connect with, that energy, we are wanting to be very rooted in what is unseen, so their own intuition, their own connection to the spiritual world, their own spiritual desire and intention in moving forward in connection. So let's look a little bit. I want to look real quickly at the flame from the book, from the guidebook for the archetype deck. Yeah. So talking about the flame, it says, when it is lit, we are connected to our purpose and sense that life is a sacred gift. It is said that those who cannot see the sacred around them have let their inner flame go out. Think of this card as a call to reignite that fire, to cup your hands gently around those things you've forgotten and protect the flame, no matter how harshly the winds blow around you. That feels like the recentering that the judge needs. And it feels like it feels very interestingly similar to how the judge could show up. Right? The judge, like I said before, the judge feels kind of cold, kind of distant, but it does have this like fiery truth or passion that it kind of moves from. And this is like a reframing of that way of being. So the flame is about protecting what is sacred inside us so that it does not go out. But at the same time, so that it does not envelop all of us, right? Like there's a balance point there. The flame, when we're honoring what it is that the flame that we hold symbolizes, then we don't have to move from a place of overexposure or showing too much or burning ourselves or others, right? We're moving from a place of our own sacred and spiritual intention, our own life force that is sacrosanct to us. And I think that that is like the reframing that the judge needs, right? If we are moving from a place of this is what's sacred in me and I am going to like care and protect it, then when we meet someone else, so like when we meet that maiden energy out in the world, we can see their flame as sacred inside of them. Even if they're not showing us their fire or passion, right? We can be with the fact that the other has that same flame in them. And we are protecting and enjoying and connecting to ours. We're coming from that place of deeper connection to ourself and our vitality. And that's what's moving us into connection versus this desire to control the other, to make the other see their flame or treat it a specific way, right? And that this balance of the unseen with the maiden feels like how we can trust the other we're guided towards, the other we're longing for in this kind of friendship connection. Because the unseen, the maiden is coming from a place that the unseen is core, that their intuition, that their playful desire, that their trust in themselves and like what will happen will be okay for them. They will handle it. They will take good care, right? While also knowing they want to receive care. That balance protects them, cares for them in its own way. So there's a similarity here between being rooted in the flame and rooted in the unseen. Though the flame feels more centered in our own vitality and our own like inner fire, the maiden is rooted in this unseen that is like a force around them that is protecting and guiding them. So it's the same energy moving forward, right? But it's just a different way of conceptualizing it. and one that is maybe more open to connection. Because I do think that these two are going to connect more intimately than if we're moving from the two on top. The Judge and Maiden are going to have a more dicey dance. It's going to be a bit more awkward, or a bit more uncomfortable, or a bit more challenging. If we're moving from the flame and the unseen spaces, there's a natural connection, because the unseen cares for and is the environment for the flame. And the flame brightens and shows the unseen. So again, these energies connect and fit together for a kind of infrastructure, a kind of structure that can then be filled with the relationship itself. Wow. That was fun and interesting. Let me know what you resonated with in the comments, because I feel like this one was quite curious. And I wonder if some of you felt connected to the Maiden more so than the Judge, and that maybe the desire from the Maiden is more along the lines of what you've been wanting. Yeah, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you going along on the journey. And I'll be back soon. Okay. Bye.